I was appointed by the governor, Governor Hickenlooper, to the Child Protection Ombudsman work group. And basically that was a group of people who were all appointed interdisciplinary to discuss like how are we going to address this challenge that we have with the ombudsman and how does that play out. And so we met for about 5 months and talked through, you know, just basically what children need and try to really focus it on the kids and how we can best serve the kids. And, you know, there was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of people who the status quo worked for them. And so changing that was a little bit of a threat to like, what is this going to look like? How does that change how we do child welfare? And I think a lot of people were a little bit anxious about it, but we came up with a really great plan, moving the ombudsman into the judicial branch so that, you know, there's judicial oversight, but there's not oversight from the executive branch, which the ombudsman is tasked with, you know, investigating and creating checks and balances for child welfare. Through the work group, one of the things that I really advocated for was that we have to have lived experience voice on the board. So somebody with foster care experience has to serve on this board. And that seat has to be equal to all other seats. And so that was my big win for that work group, was one that the ombudsman became independent, was no longer under the executive branch, and you know, had a lot more autonomy and capability in becoming independent. But then also that foster youth voice would always be at the table at the executive level for the ombudsman. When that all went through and the legislation passed, of course, I applied to be the person to serve on the board as the former foster youth. So I feel like in the last couple of years, the ombudsman has just blossomed into this incredible organization and can do so much more, but is doing so much for children and young people experiencing child welfare and other protection issues in our state. And it really supports families who are confused about what's going on. They can call and they can say, hey, I don't know what's going on. I don't think this is right. And they can have somebody look into it and explain what's going on. And, you know, being someone who saw how much my parents struggled with managing all of the systems, I think that having the ombudsman as a resource is so important. And for families, for youth, for caseworkers, for our system as a whole to be better, I think the ombudsman, especially being independent in the office that it is now, and the ombudsman that we have now, I think we do a lot of really good work. I think that it's really important that we have lived experience at the table. And so people who were in foster care, especially people who were in foster care and now, you know, are in this in a professional capacity, I think bring a lot to the table. And for me, a lot of times being the person with lived experience at the table, I'm the least educated because a lot of other people have like law degrees and things like that, or they're, you know, directors of whatever. And, so a lot of times I feel like the lived experience voice is the common sense voice, and we're kind of bringing it back to like what really happens and the kids and the youth and the people, and taking it away from policy and procedures and things like that and really bringing it back to the people. And so with my lived experience in foster care, when I was a teenager, I realized that I was having a very different experience than my peers in foster care. And part of that experience was that I was empowered to talk about what was going on. And I had foster parents who listened to me and, you know, advocated for me. And so for me as a person with lived experience, it's really important that we figure out where the youth being marginalized and where are the youth not able to speak up, and how do we empower them to speak up. And that's why the ombudsman is so important to me, is because it gives the youth an opportunity, even anonymously, to say, this is happening to me. I don't think this is right. Can you look into this? And, a lot of times it's a misunderstanding. We don't understand what's going on, what the policies are, why things are happening the way that they're happening. And not necessarily that something wrong is happening, but that there needs to be clarity. And to have this resource where, a young person, a family, a case worker, a foster parent, a grandparent could call up and say, this is what's happening. And then somebody with deep expertise in child welfare can explain to them, this is why this is happening, and this is why it's following policy, or in the case that it's not, this is how we're going to address this issue. And so I think it's just very empowering for people with lived experience to be able to have this resource, and especially for me as a person with lived experience, to have a platform to be able to say, we're going to talk about what's happening. We're going to talk about the negative sides. We want someone to look into these things, and to really tell youth in the system, speak up, talk about what's happening, tell your GAL, call the Ombudsman, and to have that resource for them, I think is really huge. Through the work group, one of the things that I really advocated for was that we have to have lived experience voice on the board. So somebody with foster care experience has to serve on this board. And that seat has to be equal to all other seats. And so that was my big win for that work group, was one that the Ombudsman became independent, was no longer under the executive branch, and had a lot more autonomy and capability in becoming independent. But then also that foster youth voice would always be at the table at the executive level for the Ombudsman. Setting up the office was such a challenge, and finding the perfect ombudsman. We interviewed some really, qualified candidates, but the Ombudsman Villaforte and her experience, her legal background, I think brings so much to the table. And then being able to bring her on and really lead the build out of the office, going from having like 2.5 staff to the full staff that we have now. I think that seeing it over the years go from absolutely nothing, like we didn't even have a cell phone for the Ombudsman, to the really robust operation that is happening today, is the thing that I'm most proud of, is to see, we had this idea that the Ombudsman could do more, and being independent would give us the autonomy to really be able to help kids and families. And, that started out like a very, very small idea, and it gained traction. And now looking back, we have, this really robust organization that's helping families and helping children and helping improve our system. And that was really built from the ground up, from nothing. And so to be a part of that every step of the way has been, I think, the proudest accomplishment for me. I'm sad to roll off. I'm excited that Commissioner Tedesco is taking my seat. Chaz is, one of my foster brothers. And so for him to be filling my seat, I think feels really good. I know that I can trust the person that is taking over for me. I can trust their expertise and their dedication to this work. And so that feels good to know that like my seat is being taken by somebody that I really trust. It's hard. It's hard to give so much to being on the board. You're giving so much time and effort and thought. Like I'm always thinking about how we could improve and things like that. And so then to leave that is really strange. And it's also different leaving when you term out from like a board and things like that, because you're not like trying to leave, you're not like, I need to get another job, or whatever the case is. It's like, I really love serving in this way. And so to roll off is a somber moment, but I'm excited for the office to move forward. And of course, I'll still continue to support them in whatever capacity I can. But yeah, so I think that I'm really proud of all the work that's been done. Looking back, there's so much to be proud of. I'm so proud of the office and of Stephanie and Jordan and everybody who has worked so hard to make it what it is today. And I also think, just looking onward for the next opportunity to serve the community and make foster care better. And so having this experience has been wonderful, and I hope I'll be able to use it in the future as well. But yeah, I think it's hard to roll off because I am so personally invested in the work that they're doing, and the future plans and things like that. And so it is hard to roll off and not be a part of the board anymore. But I'm excited for Commissioner Tedesco to take my spot and to see, how the office evolves in the future as well.